Ethan Carter had always been the hard-working, determined type. For over a decade, he dedicated himself to Carter Manufacturing, the family business founded by his late father-in-law, Samuel Carter. With his strategic mindset and relentless effort, he transformed the company from a struggling factory into a thriving enterprise. To Samuel, Ethan was not just a son-in-law, but the backbone of the business, a man who kept the wheels turning when the company faced hardships. The company, Carter Manufacturing, was situated in a bustling Midwestern city, known for its manufacturing legacy. The office had a rustic charm, blending old brickwork with modern, sleek renovations, many of which Ethan had overseen himself. Employees respected him, not only for his leadership, but for his willingness to roll up his sleeves and work alongside them. His wife, Amelia, and her sisters, Victoria and Layla, were more distanced from the day-to-day operations. While Samuel had poured his life into the business, the sisters enjoyed the benefits without truly understanding its foundations. After Samuel passed away, the company's future was uncertain. Yet Ethan, guided by the promise he made to Samuel to uphold his legacy, continued to steer the company toward success. But everything changed one fateful Tuesday morning. That Tuesday started like any other. Ethan arrived at the Carter Manufacturing office early, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the latest quarterly reports. As COO, he was used to juggling problems, fixing inefficiencies, and making sure production ran smoothly. He took pride in how far the company had come since he first joined. Dusty, outdated machinery, now replaced with cutting-edge equipment, and profits steadily climbing year after year. As the board meeting approached, Ethan noticed a tension in the air. Colleagues avoided eye contact, and whispers trailed behind him. He brushed it off, attributing it to the usual office drama. Taking his seat at the head of the conference table, he expected a routine update. Instead, his wife, Amelia, entered the room, flanked by Victoria and Layla, all dressed in coordinated business attire, their faces set in stone. Amelia cleared her throat, her voice colder than he'd ever heard. "Ethan, we've decided to take the company in a new direction," she began, sliding an envelope across the table. "Effective immediately, your position as COO is terminated." The room fell silent. Ethan stared at his wife, searching for a hint of regret or compassion, but there was none. Victoria and Layla kept their gazes fixed on the polished table, avoiding his eyes. Amelia's tone remained firm, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. "With Dad gone, it's time the family regains full control," she said. The word hit Ethan like a gut punch. Family. As if he wasn't a part of it. For a decade, he had been the driving force behind the company, the one Samuel trusted when nobody else believed in the business's revival. And now, without warning or reason, he was being pushed out by the very people he had worked tirelessly to support. Ethan opened the envelope and skimmed the termination notice. The legal jargon barely registered as anger and betrayal simmered within him. He wanted to protest, to make them see reason. "Why?" was all he managed to say, his voice cracking. Amelia didn't flinch. "It's just business, Ethan. You'll find something else. We have to protect Dad's legacy." Legacy. The word repeated in his mind, sour and hollow. Did they not see that he was part of that legacy? Samuel had believed in him, not just as a son-in-law, but as a business partner. Amelia's dismissal of his efforts stung deeper than any professional blow could. With his heart pounding, Ethan grabbed the envelope, left the boardroom without another word, and headed straight for his truck. As he sat behind the wheel, the reality hit him. His wife, the woman he had loved and supported, had betrayed him alongside her sisters. The life he had built around Carter Manufacturing was crumbling. But as he sat there, his eyes caught a glint of light from his keychain, the one Samuel had given him after they'd landed their biggest client. It reminded him of something: the contract. Ethan pulled out his old employment agreement from the glove compartment, flipping through it hurriedly. Then he found it, a clause Samuel had insisted on, buried deep in the legal text. If terminated without cause, Ethan would receive his full salary for 5 years. A slow, triumphant smile spread across his face. They didn't know. Amelia and her sisters had no idea what they had just triggered. The gravity of the situation settled on Ethan as he sat in his truck, processing the newfound revelation. Amelia and her sisters had fired him without cause, triggering the clause that guaranteed his full salary for 5 years. Samuel had safeguarded his future without Ethan even realizing it at the time. Relief washed over him, mingled with a bittersweet sense of vindication. That night, Ethan booked himself into a modest motel on the outskirts of town. The room was cramped, with dated furnishings and a flickering lamp. But it was a place to think, away from Amelia, away from the life that now seemed like a distant memory. He spent hours lying on the lumpy mattress, the contract clutched in his hand, replaying every word Amelia had spoken that day. How could she so easily discard him? The next morning, reality set in. Ethan knew that Carter Manufacturing was about to face a reckoning. As COO, he had been the glue holding the company together, from negotiating contracts to managing production efficiency. Without him, the business would inevitably falter. Yet, the thought of returning, even if they begged, didn't sit right with him. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan started to find his footing again. A friend from the manufacturing sector, Ryan Patel, reached out with a consulting opportunity at a smaller company called Phoenix Dynamics. They were scrappy but eager, looking to expand and compete with the big players, Carter Manufacturing included. Ethan took the offer, realizing he still had plenty of fight left in him. Meanwhile, Carter Manufacturing began to crumble. Amelia had pushed for aggressive cost-cutting measures, including reducing maintenance budgets and letting go of experienced staff. Machines broke down, orders fell behind schedule, and longtime clients started looking elsewhere. Victoria tried to salvage the situation with new product lines, but her lack of industry knowledge led to poor choices, and Layla, always the passive one, simply nodded along. Then, one evening, as Ethan was wrapping up at Phoenix Dynamics, his phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague read, "Amelia's in meltdown mode. Clients are furious. Machines are breaking, and nobody knows what to do. Thought you'd like to know." Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. They thought they could run Carter Manufacturing without him. They thought cutting him loose was just business. Now they were paying the price. A few days later, Amelia showed up at Ethan's new apartment, her usually composed face flushed with frustration. "We need to talk," she demanded, her voice taut. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, blocking her from entering. "You're still taking money from the company," Amelia accused, eyes blazing. It's not your money, Ethan replied calmly. It's Samuel's gift, my severance. You fired me, remember? She looked momentarily taken aback, then pressed on. Fine. We need you back, Ethan. The company is falling apart. We'll make it right. Better salary, more say. Just come back. For a moment, Ethan almost felt pity. But then he remembered how she had looked at him in that boardroom, like he was nothing. He shook his head. You wanted control, Amelia. You got it. You don't get to rewrite that now. Her composure faltered, desperation flashing in her eyes. This isn't just about pride. It's about saving Dad's legacy. Ethan met her gaze, unwavering. Samuel's legacy was built on trust and loyalty. You threw that away. I'm not your fix-it guy anymore. Amelia's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, she looked defeated. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Ethan to close the door on that chapter of his life. As he sat back down at his makeshift desk, Ethan knew he'd made the right choice. Carter Manufacturing was collapsing under the weight of Amelia's ego, and he wasn't going to be the one to save it. Not this time. In the months that followed, Ethan embraced his new life. The cramped motel room was soon replaced by a modest one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was his. A space free from the suffocating presence of Amelia and her sisters. He settled into his new role at Phoenix Dynamics, where his ideas were welcomed rather than dismissed. The company was small, but it had potential. Ryan Patel, the owner, was hands-on and valued Ethan's input, a stark contrast to the hostile environment he had left behind. Ethan's experience in streamlining operations and cutting unnecessary expenses was precisely what Phoenix needed. Slowly but surely, the company started to gain traction in the market. One evening, after a long day, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with a beer in hand, reviewing a proposal for a new client. His phone buzzed, a notification from an old colleague at Carter Manufacturing. Curious, he opened the message. Things are falling apart here. Amelia fired half the sales team and production's at a standstill. Clients are furious. Thought you'd want to know. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. Amelia had underestimated just how vital he had been to the company's success. She had been so consumed with controlling Carter Manufacturing that she hadn't realized she was dismantling it piece by piece. Yet, despite the sense of justice, Ethan couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. He had poured his heart into that company, not just for Samuel, but for the vision they had shared, a legacy built on hard work and integrity. Now, all that progress was unraveling because of Amelia's pride and Victoria's misguided decisions. The next morning, Ryan greeted Ethan with a wide grin. You're a wizard, Carter. That new logistics plan you put together? Cut our shipping costs by 20%. We've got more room to expand now. Hearing that lit a spark of pride in Ethan. For the first time in months, he felt a genuine sense of accomplishment. Phoenix wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Ryan even hinted at a potential partnership role if Ethan kept delivering results. One afternoon, during a quiet moment at the office, Ethan found himself reflecting on the whirlwind of changes. The man who had once defined himself by his role at Carter Manufacturing was evolving. He wasn't just a cog in someone else's machine anymore. At Phoenix, He was rebuilding not only a company, but himself. That evening, as he was locking up, another message came through from his former coworker. Amelia's desperate. She's even talking about selling the company. Victoria and Layla are fed up. Thought you'd want to know. Ethan didn't respond, but he knew what was happening. Carter Manufacturing, once a symbol of Samuel's vision, was crumbling because the sisters refused to acknowledge their mistakes. Part of him wanted to swoop in and save it, but another part knew better. It wasn't his responsibility anymore. Instead of dwelling on it, Ethan decided to focus on what mattered, building his future on his own terms. Carter Manufacturing might fall, but Ethan was no longer bound by it. He was forging a new path, and for the first time, he felt truly free. As the months went by, Ethan found himself fully immersed in his role at Phoenix Dynamics. The company was evolving rapidly, thanks in large part to his strategic leadership. Ryan had officially made him a partner, and they were gearing up to tackle bigger projects and expand their client base. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like his talents were being truly recognized and valued. One morning, as he was finalizing a proposal for a major distribution deal, Ryan walked into his office, a wide grin on his face. "You won't believe it," Ryan said, tossing a newspaper onto Ethan's desk. The headline read, "Carter Manufacturing on the Brink of Collapse." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He scanned the article, which detailed how the company had lost several major contracts and was hemorrhaging money. Amelia's aggressive cost-cutting had backfired, and Victoria's poor decisions on cheaper product lines had pushed clients away. Layla, as usual, had stayed silent through it all. "They did this to themselves," Ethan muttered, almost feeling sorry for them. Almost. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You know, there's talk that Amelia's looking to sell. She's desperate. The company's worth a fraction of what it used to be." Ethan looked up, intrigued. The idea of buying back Carter Manufacturing had never crossed his mind, not until now. Would reclaiming the business be a victory or a step backward? That evening, he thought about Samuel. The old man had poured his life into Carter Manufacturing, and together they had built something meaningful. Maybe buying it back would honor that legacy rather than letting it crumble. But then again, did he really want to inherit the mess Amelia had made? A few days later, Amelia herself showed up at Phoenix Dynamics. Ethan hadn't seen her in months, and the sight of her disheveled appearance shocked him. Her confident demeanor was gone, replaced by worry and desperation. "Ethan, we need to talk," she pleaded. He nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. She didn't waste time. "Carter Manufacturing is collapsing. Victoria and Layla are at their wits' end. We need someone who actually knows how to run it. Please, just hear me out." Ethan leaned back, maintaining his composure. "You made it clear I wasn't needed, Amelia. You and your sisters wanted control, and now you have it." She gripped the edge of his desk, her voice breaking. "I was wrong, okay? We thought we could do it without you, but we couldn't. You were the one holding it all together." For a moment, Ethan almost felt sorry for her, but he remembered how cold and dismissive she had been when she fired him. This wasn't just about saving the company. It was about saving face. Amelia took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. "If you take over, I'll sign the business over to you. No fights, no strings. Just save it." Ethan stared at her, processing the offer. The thought of resurrecting Carter Manufacturing from the ashes was tempting. But he couldn't help but question Amelia's sincerity. Was she truly remorseful? Or was this just a desperate attempt to salvage her reputation? "Why now?" Ethan asked quietly. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "Because you're the only one who can." He considered her words carefully. Taking back Carter Manufacturing wouldn't just be a business decision. It would be personal redemption. He could restore the company's reputation and make it stronger than ever, proving once and for all that he was the cornerstone Samuel had always believed in. But could he really trust Amelia after everything she'd done? That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Amelia's plea echoed in his mind, and the memories of being blindsided at the boardroom crept back in. He didn't want to fall into the same trap, trusting people who would only betray him again. Yet, the idea of saving Carter Manufacturing lingered like an itch he couldn't scratch. The next day, he discussed the situation with Ryan over coffee. Ryan was pragmatic, as always. "You've got to think about what you really want," Ryan said, stirring his cup. "You're doing great here. Phoenix Dynamics is thriving, and you're finally free from their mess. Do you really want to jump back into that chaos?" Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "It's not just about the company. It's about Samuel's legacy. He believed in me when no one else did." Carter Manufacturing was more than just a job. It was a promise I made to him. Ryan gave him a knowing look. "Then maybe the question isn't whether you save it, but how you save it. Do it on your terms. If you're going to take back the company, make sure you're the one calling the shots." The conversation sparked something inside Ethan. If he took back Carter Manufacturing, it wouldn't be to fix Amelia's mistakes. It would be to rebuild it the way Samuel would have wanted. He wasn't going back to be anyone's safety net. If Amelia wanted his help, she'd have to relinquish control completely. The next evening, Amelia showed up at his apartment again, her eyes tired but determined. "I talked to Victoria and Layla," she began. "They agree. You should take over. We'll sell you the majority stake at a fraction of the value. Just don't let Dad's company die." Ethan looked at her, assessing her sincerity. "You're willing to hand it over without any strings attached?" Amelia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. We messed up. I messed up. I thought I knew what was best, but I didn't. You were always the one Dad trusted, and I was too stubborn to see it." Her honesty caught him off guard. For the first time since the firing, Ethan saw a glimpse of the woman he once loved, the one who used to believe in his vision. But the scars from her betrayal still lingered, and he couldn't just ignore them. "Here's the deal," Ethan said firmly. "I take full control. No interference from you or your sisters. I rebuild it from the ground up. And this time, I do it my way." Amelia nodded, swallowing her pride. "Deal." A week later, the papers were signed. Carter Manufacturing was officially under Ethan's command. The transition wasn't easy. Clients needed reassurance. Employees needed stability. And the brand needed a complete overhaul. But Ethan was relentless, working day and night to bring the company back from the brink. With his new team at Phoenix Dynamics supporting him, Ethan implemented streamlined operations, brought back experienced workers who had been fired, and reestablished relationships with key clients. Bit by bit, Carter Manufacturing began to heal. Through it all, Ethan learned something vital. He wasn't just rebuilding a company, he was rebuilding himself. He was no longer just Samuel's son-in-law or Amelia's husband. He was Ethan Carter, a man who had faced betrayal, picked himself up, and built something stronger from the ashes. Amelia and her sisters stayed out of the business as promised, and although their personal relationship was fractured beyond repair, Ethan felt a sense of closure. He had taken back what was rightfully his, not just the company, but his own sense of purpose. One year, after regaining control, Carter Manufacturing was almost unrecognizable. The company had transformed from a crumbling business into a revitalized powerhouse. Ethan had brought back the heart and soul of the place, its people. Workers who had been fired during Amelia's reckless cuts were rehired, and their loyalty returned as they saw the positive changes taking shape. The factory floors buzzed with energy, machinery hummed efficiently, and the warehouse was bustling with shipments once again. Clients who had previously cut ties were now returning, drawn by Ethan's reputation for integrity and reliability. The brand overhaul was a success, with Carter Manufacturing repositioning itself as a leader in quality manufacturing, just as Samuel had envisioned. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan found himself alone in the refurbished office that once belonged to Samuel. A plaque on the wall read, "Dedication, integrity, perseverance." Those words had guided him through the toughest year of his life. He sat down, reflecting on the journey from betrayal to redemption. Just then, Ryan walked in, grinning ear to ear. "Guess who just signed on for another 5-year contract?" Ryan announced. Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Stewart Automotive. They're switching all their parts manufacturing back to us." Ethan couldn't help but smile. Stewart had been one of Carter's biggest clients before Amelia's disastrous management. Getting them back was more than just business. It was proof that Carter Manufacturing was thriving again. As the news spread, the atmosphere in the factory shifted from hopeful to celebratory. Employees congratulated Ethan, patting him on the back and thanking him for bringing stability and success back to the company. He knew it wasn't just his victory, it was a collective one. The people who stayed loyal, the ones who returned when he called, and those who believed in his leadership were the true heroes of Carter's comeback. That night, Ethan drove to the old cemetery where Samuel was buried. Standing by the gravestone, he whispered, "I did it, Samuel. I kept your legacy alive." A cool breeze seemed to affirm his words, and he couldn't help but feel that somewhere, Samuel was smiling. As he walked back to his truck, Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from Amelia appeared on the screen. "Heard about Stewart Automotive. You really did it. I'm proud of you." He paused, considering how far he had come since that day in the boardroom when his world was turned upside down. He didn't reply, choosing instead to put the phone away. Amelia had her path, and he had his. Driving back to the office, Ethan knew one thing for sure. He wasn't the man who had once felt defeated and betrayed. He was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Carter Manufacturing was his now, not because it was handed to him, but because he had earned it. The future looked bright. Ethan didn't just rebuild a company, he rebuilt himself. From the ashes of betrayal, he forged a legacy of his own, one that would endure just as Samuel had hoped. Life lesson. Ethan's journey teaches us that resilience is born from hardship, and true strength lies in standing up after being knocked down. When faced with betrayal from those he trusted the most, Ethan didn't let bitterness consume him. Instead, he used his pain as fuel to rebuild his life on his own terms. Sometimes, life throws unexpected challenges our way, but it's not the fall that defines us. It's how we rise. By staying true to his values and focusing on his own growth, Ethan proved that success isn't about holding on to the past, but forging a new path forward. Another powerful lesson here is about self-worth. Ethan initially allowed others to dictate his role and value, but once he reclaimed his independence, he discovered his own strength. It's essential to recognize our worth, even when others fail to see it. Letting go of toxic situations and focusing on self-improvement can open doors to new, fulfilling opportunities. Ethan's journey from betrayal to triumph reminds us that growth often comes from leaving behind what no longer serves us. Real-life application. In our own lives, we may face situations where those we love or trust let us down. It's natural to feel hurt, but staying in that place of resentment only holds us back. Instead, focus on rebuilding yourself. Whether it's finding a new job, pursuing a passion, or starting fresh, resilience is key. Invest in your skills. Seek out supportive environments, and don't be afraid to walk away from people who undermine your worth. If you've ever been undervalued at work or in a relationship, take a lesson from Ethan. Know your value and don't settle for less. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right by building a better future. Let your past struggles shape you, but never define you. Moving forward with purpose and strength is the ultimate victory.